Today, I want to talk to you about a topic that's very personal. Oftentimes on this podcast, I've kept my posts topical, chosen an interesting subject matter of a veterinary nature that's of interest to pet owners, and tried to give factual and useful information to pet owners, and maybe even some thoughts to veterinary colleagues, or topics of discussion and so on. But today I want to stray into a difficult topic, a more emotional topic and a more personal topic for the first time, and I want to talk about pet bereavement. The issue of dealing with the loss of an animal, the grief and the grieving process of the loss of an animal, and the impact it has on all of us as vets, the impact it has on our pet owning, animal owning customers, and the wider subject matter of grief and loss. I'd like to think that at the age of 55 now, after 30 years as a vet, I'm good at helping people deal with the loss of an animal. I'm good at helping them through the process of rationalising when is the right time to let go of an animal. And I regard it as one of the more rewarding parts of my job, in terms of the positive impact I can have on people at an upsetting time. And I've gotten better at it as I've gotten older, in terms of helping people deal with that process and guide them through the process. But if it makes any sense to say this, as I have gotten older, it's become harder on me. And is it because as I've gotten older, am I somehow now growing an empathy gene that I didn't have? But certainly at the moment, I have found lately in particular, it's playing on my mind much more so. And in the last month, I must say, it's the winter, it's the time of year, but it's become more noticeable that we seem to be doing more euthanasias. Just at the moment, it's very much a seasonal thing, but it's playing on my mind. An older man in recently the other day with a very ill animal, and we had that discussion about an impending euthanasia of his little dog. And a single man from a horse background, farming, and he said to me in a very open, very personal way, he said, "Do you know, it never gets any easier. I never get used to losing them, and I've lost so many of them in my life." And in many ways I felt the same. I feel the same. I understood what he means by that. Perhaps it's the climate of the times that even other men are more likely to open up to each other about the difficulty they feel in terms of understanding when it's time to let go of a pet. And my job as a vet is to help them understand when is the right time to let go. And one thing I often say is, you're better to make a decision to put a pet to sleep, put an animal to sleep, to euthanize an animal a day early than a day late. And we rationalise that on the basis of, we try and do it before the quality of life of an animal has left completely. But something that concerns me is the emotional impact on ourselves as vets, and the emotional impact on people at the same time when they let go of an animal. People seem to have less emotional support around themselves than they used to have years ago. People seem to be lonelier. And it very much comes with the territory of the emotional impact. This is the daily impact of the bond that people have with their animals, and part of the job that we have to deal with as vets. As I say, look, my experience with animal loss began, if I can go all the way back. I watched my father, who was deeply embedded, deeply immersed with animals, and he was a horse trainer, and dogs and cats and cattle and mares and foals and horses in training. We were surrounded by them, and believe it or not, I actually watched my father from that background. He grieved for a year over the loss of a horse. A mare he had trained, that he rode, and he won a few races on, and he brought her to Cheltenham when, as I say, I was 14, and he rode her in a race at Cheltenham, and she broke her leg and had to be euthanized on the track. And the impact it had on me at the time was, as I say, I watched my father grieve the loss of that horse for a year, thereabouts. And I suppose my experience with animal loss and the impact I could have in a positive way during that process, and my relationship with animals and my journey into veterinary, maybe it began at that stage of my life. It could have, I'm not sure, but that played in my mind recently. As I say, the spate of recent euthanasias I've had, whereby more and more I'm encountering lonely people at a stage in their lives where they have to let go of an older animal and the impact it has on them. And I very much think about and worry about my duty to have a positive impact on people at that time. And it's a conversation I'm just beginning to have, maybe with colleagues and with myself, and figuring out how we can continue to do it better and how we can continue to deal with it emotionally ourselves and get better at it. I have 3 young women vets here working in the practice with me, and they don't deal with the emotional impact of it on themselves any better than I do. I have 2 vet students working at the weekends here in the boarding kennels attached to the practice, and I had a conversation just this morning here on a Sunday morning with the 2 vets on duty, one a final year student, one a third year student, and I said, guys, what experience do you have in college on this process? And they said, we have one lecture in the 5 years on a tutorial or a seminar on the emotional impact of dealing with upset people and how do we help them with the process. We have one seminar on it in the 5 years. Yes, said the other girl. Then we have one lecture basically on the mechanics of it, how you do euthanasia and what's the best way of doing it. No, but after that it's left for us to go out into practice, and whatever way it's done in practice is the way we're supposed to learn. So that's what they said, the 2 vet students. And as I say, I have 3 here, 3 young vets with me, and if that's their experience, that they've had one seminar and one on the emotional impact and one lecture on the mechanics of it, and after that it falls to me as their employer, as their clinical leader, to guide them through it in terms of learning to deal with it themselves. There's not a lot out there for any of us as vets, and how do we get better at helping our customers, helping owners to deal with a problem which is, as people become lonelier, it's an emotionally, socially increasing problem that we as vets are at the forefront of, and the impact we can have on people, and we have to be really careful that that impact is positive and it's appropriate. Appropriate for the customers and appropriate for ourselves. The analogy that comes to me as I consider, how my 5 veterinary colleagues, 3 in the practice with me, and the 2 students, they're sent out there by these universities to deal with this process, a little bit like sending soldiers onto the front line without bulletproof vests. Undoubtedly, they're coming into a clinical and practice environment where they're in the emotional firing line, and they're like soldiers without bulletproof vests in terms of how do they deal with that themselves and how do they best learn to help their customers deal with it. So they're my thoughts for the day, and as I say, it's just the start of a conversation, because it's something that as I get older I'm more aware of my responsibilities to help people with this problem, and as I get older it doesn't become any easier for us as vets to deal with it.